Sometimes I like to take a particular product or group of products and see how I can use them together in a way that truly creates a work of art. For today's project, I'll be using several different techniques, and I just love the way the finished result turns out. I hope you'll watch along, hopefully learn some new techniques, and see a beautiful project come together. Let's get started. Here is the bundle I will be using for today's project. It's the Perched in a Tree bundle. You can see the stamp set with this lovely bird. And then here is part of the die set. This die right here is just amazing. You're going to love what I'm going to do with this. There's a branch, and then there are some leaves and also a die to cut out the bird. So what I want to do, I have several steps, like I mentioned, several techniques, and we are just going to start looking at them one by one. Now let's look at the bird I'm going to use on the card first. I have already stamped it. I stamped it with some gray granite ink. I did use regular cardstock. I debated which kind of cardstock to use because I'm using my water painters, and with water painters, I really like to use shimmery white cardstock. It has a little bit of a vanilla hue to it, and I decided, just because the way everything else looks, to stick with regular white cardstock. But here's my water painter, and here is that gray granite ink. Now, typically, if you are using water painters or adding water of any type, you want to be careful about what kind of ink you have stamped with. Because I used this gray granite ink to stamp with, I have to be aware that if I apply much water to it, I'm sorry, that it very well may bleed. Now, what I have found is if I'm not applying a lot of water, that typically I don't have too many issues. And the reason I didn't use my stays on ink is because it's just so dark, and a lot of times when I'm coloring in images, I like to go with some kind of light ink just so that it doesn't take away from my project. Black and dark brown and the colors I have just don't always blend in with my project. So before we started here, I had added some real red ink to the bird's head and to the wing. And here I'm adding that gray granite. Now I'm going to come in and add some gray to the wing so that the red and the gray start to blend together here. Now, I wanted to do this first and let it dry because we are going to apply something else to it and then add it to our finished card here in a little bit. Now let me bring in this is kind of the highlight of the card in my opinion. So this is the piece I have cut with that beautiful tree die that is in this Aspen tree die set. Now I cut this out of crumb cake ink, and it's a little bit hard to believe when you look at the finished product. And let me show you what we are working towards, what we are going to create here. And this is the finished result. Now, I don't know what this looks like on screen, of course, but in person, this is just stunning. It is a little bit hard to believe that I took this and created this as simply as I did. But let me show you right here how to do so. What I need is some white craft ink and a sponge. So I'll bring this in here. And what I did first was I just dabbed this on my ink pad to get some on, and I turned this all to the left, 90 degrees, and I started at the top, and what I'm going to do is drag downwards. Now my goal with this was to get more white ink on the right side of the trees than will be on the left side. You know, when it snows, a lot of times, especially if it's windy, the snow will stick more to one side of the trees than it does to the other. So this was my goal with doing this, was to get more white ink on the right side and a little bit less on the left side to make it look like it had snowed, and that snow stuck to the right sides of the trees. Now it didn't turn out quite how I had envisioned, but I love the way it turned out. So we will go with that. Then all around the edges, I took the ink and I just dabbed it so that the entire outside was white. or white with some crumb cake showing through instead of that crumb cake color. Much of our card is going to be white, but I really wanted these trees to have a little bit of color so they stood out. So that's why I decided to start with the crumb cake and then apply the white ink to it. So continue this until you have gotten the white ink all around that frame and your trees have enough white that you are happy with the way they look. Okay, once you have done this, you may want to let that dry just for a few seconds. And then you are going to apply some Versamark ink. The next thing we're going to do is a little bit of heat embossing. So I got my Versamark ink pad, and I'm not actually going to do this right now, but I'll tell you what I did. So I laid this on some scrap paper again. I turned my Versamark ink pad upside down and pressed firmly all over this piece so that there's Versamark ink covering the entire piece. After that, I sprinkled my clear embossing powder over the top so that it was covering the entire thing, shook off the excess, and I used my heat tool to heat emboss that entire piece. So once I was done with that, I ended up with this piece right here. And I was a little bit surprised how beautiful it was just with those two quick steps. I thought this really turned out unique and beautiful. Now let me show you what we're going to do for the piece that is going behind here. I wanted glistening snow in the background, a beautiful glistening snow background. And I also wanted the look of having some snow drifts in the background. So this is a piece of the white glimmer paper. It comes from a pack that is real red and white glimmer paper. It comes in a 6x6 size. And if you're interested in any of these products, you can find links in the video description below. So I have one piece that is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. This piece, by the way, measures 4 by 5 1/4. So this one is just slightly smaller than this one. And then I created these. I just took a rectangle and I tore the edges to get the snowdrift effect. This is something I really like to do on wintry cards. And now I am going to put these onto this larger piece. So when you are attaching glimmer paper, you want to make sure you use some really good adhesive. You could try some Seal Plus or something else that's really strong. What I find a lot of times is with glimmer paper, my best bet is just to use some of my green bottle glue. Okay, now my edges aren't lining up completely, and that's okay because I can trim them off, and actually this won't end up showing at the end anyway. Hopefully you can see the glimmers here. And what we're going to do is lay this over the top, and I'll bring this up close so that hopefully you can appreciate what this is going to look like as we go along. So we have the snowdrifts and this beautiful frosty, shimmery, icy tree scene in the foreground. Now what I want to do is attach this piece over the top. And I'm going to want to slide something in behind one of these pieces in a little while. So I am not going to glue all of the trees down. What I'm going to do is make sure I get the corners attached really well, and that should be enough to hold this in place. So again, I'm going to use this glue. Lay this on top, and I'll have a little bit of wiggle room if I don't get it on perfectly, but that looks good. Now I'm going to set this off to the side with something laying on top of it for a moment while that dries, and let's bring our bird back in. So we have so many sparkles and special effects on this card. I didn't think our bird would be complete without some Wink of Stella. So I am going to apply this over the top. If you do not know my friend Stella, she is just amazing. I'll hold this up close here in a second so that hopefully you can appreciate the effect that applying a little Stella over top of some of your projects can give you. So just creates a really, really pretty sparkle, and it stays on the project. I love sparkle. I love bling on my projects. I don't really like when the sparkle falls off on my carpet or on my hands. So this is a really nice option for that. Okay, now let me bring in the card base. We are going to start assembling. I have several other pieces here. I'm going to share a couple other techniques here in a moment, but this is where it starts to get fun because we get to start seeing all of this come together. Now I can tell a little bit of my white glimmer paper is sticking out over here where I had that rough edge, so I will trim that off. And we are going to attach this onto the gray granite background. I thought it was really funny after I embossed this that the crumb cake turned into this grayish color. So I had to change the color cardstock I chosen for a few things, but I really love the way it turned out. It's one of those things that was a happy accident. It's not what I planned, but it is better than what I planned. So here I have some Seal Plus. This is fairly thick from the layering of the glimmer paper and that large die cut. So I definitely want to use some nice strong adhesive here. Place this on our card base. And let me bring in these other pieces I have prepared and show them to you. First, we have a branch. Now this stamp is in the stamp set and the die is in the die set. I actually stamped this onto some snowy white velvet. I almost called it vellum, velvet paper. So this feels velvety. It's another, I feel this card is going to have a lot of texture, a lot of layers, and that velvet just adds one more little bit of interesting texture to it. So I stamped that with the gray granite. I let it dry for a little bit because it's not really paper. It took a little bit for that to dry. So I have that prepared. Now I know it's winter time and I know that our trees don't have leaves on them, but I couldn't resist die cutting two of these leaves from some of my rose gold specialty paper. I wanted a little bit of a background for the bird, where we're going to place the bird, and I thought these would be really pretty. So I prepared those. And then I used this greeting in the set, wishing you abundant joy and peace. Punched that out, and I punched another one with my gray cardstock. So this is what we have prepared. We'll add a few other things as we finish this. Let me show you how I want to prepare our tag. I really like punches that I can use on my projects. Sometimes I wish I could layer my punches and have a little outline for them, but typically with punches, we don't really have that option. But here you can see what I do sometimes when I want to do that. What I do, I just punch the one that's going to be on top and then the second one that is in a different color, and I snip the background one in half, apply a little glue or whatever adhesive I want, and I just attach it so that a little bit of that is showing on the top and the bottom. And typically you cannot even tell that it was cut in the middle. Okay, so that gives the effect of having a little bit larger piece, a little outline, just by using that same punch. Okay, so we have that prepared. Now what we're going to do is start to layer these different pieces. Now I said I wanted to slide something back in behind the one tree. So let's lay these pieces in and see how they are looking. Thought this card needed some ribbon. This is some metallic mesh ribbon that I really love. It's not, I like that it's translucent, is totally not the word, but I like that you can see through it. It's not solid. So I am going to attach a leaf, the branch, the ribbon. We're going to attach the bird here on top. And then I'm going to add a few embellishments. After I have done all of that, here you can see how this card came together. So we have these fun techniques. We have the sparkle. We have that beautiful icy frosty look from the embossing, our watercoloring with our water painters, all kinds of fun things. So I would love for you to try this card at home or try one or two of the techniques that I shared. If you have questions, please comment in the comments below in the video description. Let me know what you like about my videos. Let me know what you want to see in future videos. I hope you have a blessed day, and I hope you'll be back again next time when I'll be here helping you to hand make with love.